Welcome to another episode of SCL News. I'm SCL Matt, and this is Sunday, August 22nd.
Whoa. Hang on here. Hang on a moment. This is Skylanders Portalcasters.
I guess you're right.
Greetings, and welcome to Skylanders Portalcasters, the podcast where we discuss anything and everything Skylanders. I am your host, GFDitto, and I am joined today by co-host Inklander and our very special guest star, Matt Sonnenberg, who is known throughout the Skylanders community primarily as SCL Matt of Skylanders Character List. And in today's episode, we're going to be discussing Skylanders hunting. Let's dive right into this. Inklander, Matt, how are you guys doing today? Are you ready to talk about this?
Yes, absolutely. This is an exciting topic, and this is pretty much like the definitive topic when it comes to Skylanders, is trying to collect and, find them all. So it's going to be a lot of fun.
I'm looking forward to it.
Awesome.
All right, so as we all know, there are 339 different figures to collect, not including magic items, traps, creation crystals, or chase variants. That's a lot to hunt down, and we are joined today by the professional who made it easiest to track down just about everything we need. Let's start by diving into the release schedules for each Skylander, the waves, etc.
Yeah, and how exactly did Skylanders Character List get started? Like, what exactly encouraged you to, start it, and how did you kind of get all the information that you did?
Very good questions.
So the site began because I started playing the games, and I could see that there was a collectible aspect to it, and I wanted to start collecting these figures. But looking around on the internet, there wasn't a complete list out there. There was one other site that was close to what I was looking for, but I love telling the story that they had figures on that site that didn't actually exist. There was actually a prototype figure that they had listed on the site, and I don't think they ever knew that it wasn't actually a figure. And so they weren't reliable in my eyes. Once I did some research and figured out that their list was wrong, I knew I needed to do something about it. It's like, if I'm looking for this list, there's no doubt in my mind that other people are looking for the list as well. So that's where I started. That was my only intent behind making the site initially, was to get a complete list of Skylanders out there. That's why, if you followed me for a long time, one of the first things I do when any new game was released was create like a PDF checklist. Just a simple black and white printable PDF checklist. You can print off, start checking off what you have, take it along to the store with you and figure out if you need figures or not. Give it to your grandma and say, hey, these are the figures I still need. It was simple. It was easy. And the site just kind of grew from there.
It was effective.
It was very effective. As we kind of talked about in our episode last season on favorite Skylanders memories, I think both Ditto and I quoted Skylanders Character List and, going shopping for figures. And especially, I remember when I went and started collecting back during Swap Force, I had one of those day one checklists with me. And it was so useful to be able to know which store is going to have what variant line, and knowing, where the best deals were, because that's also something that you would discuss as well, as which stores are going to have discounts on starter packs or discounts on characters with starter packs. And I always found that to be really useful. It definitely helped save a lot of money when collecting a franchise that could really cost you thousands of dollars. It was really helpful.
Absolutely.
It absolutely did cost you thousands of dollars.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, in the early days too, I was spending all that money. By the end of the run, I finally got into the good graces of Activision, and they would start sending me things, so I didn't have to buy everything. But I mean, I was still out there hunting different variants and different, the chase variants in particular. But they would send me a few creation crystals. I'd still have to go out and complete the collection. It was something that, yeah, like you said, it was not cheap to complete the hobby. It was not something that you wanted to, go into without any knowledge of, because there's so much to keep track of. But yeah, those day one checklists were one of my favorite things to put together, even though it took so much extra effort just for like a 1 day thing. Like once day one passed, no one cared about a day one checklist.
That's fair.
That's true, especially because I would have just gone and bought every single thing on that list.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's a great resource for day one to make sure you didn't miss anything. I mean, well, and then they started throwing us curveballs when they're like, hey, we're gonna put a golden hot streak in the starter pack, and I'm like, that was a surprise that no one had planned for. I have no idea how they kept that one quiet.
Oh yeah, Superchargers was a mess anyway with starter packs, because if you wanted to get everything like day one immediately,
you're buying like 7 starter packs. It was ridiculous.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Then there was me. I was at that point in the collection process where I wanted to get all of the, like the Bowsers, the Donkey Kongs, and the Spitfire, but really it was down to, okay, I can be reasonable about this and get one and still have money to play around with for some of the other characters in the series, or I can do all of this and I'm pretty much done for the rest of the year.
Which way did you go?
I went the reasonable way so I could get at least one of every character. I ended up, I got the Wii U version that came with Donkey Kong, and then I went halves with my brother on the DS game because I enjoy a good kart racer and he wanted the Bowser. And then I didn't know later on that Donkey Kong and Bowser were going to come out in a dual pack with their vehicles.
No one did.
So I went ahead and I went halves with my brother on that, and then I went and bought Bowser and the Clown Cruiser anyway, separately. But I didn't get all the 7 different starter packs, and now I'm kind of kicking myself over that because my brother and I had to go back and find the dark versions of Donkey Kong and Bowser and their vehicles. And it would have just been so much easier to buy a starter pack back then. Especially when stores had them on clearance because they were just trying to get rid of them.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, that is one good thing about Skylanders starter packs, is if they're still around and sitting on shelves, just even 3-4 months later after launch, you can typically find them for like half off.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely still, though, I think it would make a lot of sense, especially during Superchargers, to hold off on buying some of those starter packs, because even though, we didn't know that Donkey Kong and Bowser were going to be released separately, you could always just find someone on eBay that was going to be selling those dark variant Skylanders anyway, and that's definitely way more cost-effective than trying to buy 7 different starter packs, which is crazy. I did it, but I probably should have held off, I think, at least when it came to Donkey Kong and Bowser. But again, no one knew that they were going to release them in separate packs. Same thing with Astro Blast, who was in the Sky Racing action pack. No one knew that Astro Blast would be released separately because they'd never done it before. There was no precedence for it. And then suddenly we have Vicarious Visions, or whoever made the decision, starting to do that. It was a little weird.
Now, I will say that because I started so late in the game, I didn't start collecting the Skylanders until Trap Team was in its final waves. I didn't exactly get any use out of the day one checklists, except for an Imaginators. Because, as I said, I didn't find the site until Superchargers had already released. We were in wave 2 when I found Skylanders character list. Because I was going back and trying to 100% the games. At least Trap Team, as far back as Trap Team at that point. I was trying to start to put together a collection so I had one of each character. Not necessarily one of each figure, but Gil Grunt, who has, 8 different variants, I would have at least one Gil Grunt, one Stealth Elf, etc. And that's when I would go to stores like GameStop, and I would just clean out their shelves from the used section, because you could typically find just about any figure out there for less than $10 used. And they almost always had a buy 2, get 1 free going. So I would walk out of there with a 5-6 pound bag of Skylanders figures for $20.
That was a beautiful time.
Oh yeah.
That was what helped me to build the collection as quickly as I did.
Yeah, all those Skylanders days were definitely helpful. And that's another thing that Skylanders character list helped out with, was knowing when those would be.
Because especially in the days of Superchargers, buy 2, get 1 free on characters and vehicles was immense. It was an immense savings. And it made it a lot easier for somebody like me, who was, at that point, single parenting on a minimum wage job, like it made it easier for me to be able to complete the collection to play with my son.
Yeah. So I guess you mentioned the waves ditto, so I'm kind of curious as to how Matt kind of figured out what was going to be in what waves and how they were going to be packaged, because it's not like, at least for the first 5 games, it's not like they would just ship, a box of Drobots to the store. It was always typically like a box of a particular wave with different Skylanders in that box. Would be like 4 Drobots and like 3 Dino Rings or things like that. So exactly how did you figure that out, Matt? And exactly what was the process of kind of getting that wave information and figuring out what was going to be coming when?
That was something that evolved over the years as well. It's in the early days when I was just figuring out how it worked too, because I started the site back in the middle of Giants. So it's still pretty early in the grand scheme of things, but I was already a game and a half behind at that point. So I was playing catch up. And it wasn't probably towards the end of Giants that I finally figured out what the waves were and how that release system worked. But not only did how I got the information evolve over time, but how they released the waves evolved over time too, because it wasn't just strict 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They'd have these weird, like, okay, here's wave 4, and now here's wave 4.1. Like, what is 4.1? That doesn't make any sense at all. But in the beginning, like I said, it was honestly me on a level playing field with everybody else. The only difference was I was constantly keeping my eyes out for information. I was on the Dark Spiral forums all day, waiting for any new post from anybody. A lot of times it's someone knew someone within a company and they would give us the information, or they released in Europe first and so we got information from over there or something like that. And they were really good about it in the forums, and they would share whatever information they had, and we were just able to post that. And some people don't like looking through forums. It can be a pain. It's an outdated technology. It's not the best format to use anymore. So anytime I could take information from there and either just put it in a blog post on my site or put it in the next SCL news video, like that was useful to people. They knew that I was going to give them the information as soon as we got it, and they didn't have to go searching for it themselves.
Yeah, and you also would send out a lot of tweets about this kind of stuff too, so if people didn't want to wait for the next news video where they got the information dump or for the next blog post, they could just check your Twitter immediately and see that information right away.
Yeah, that's definitely the way to do it. That's why I put that stuff out there. But, I mean, honestly, over time, though, I made more connections, and I was able to kind of get that inside track. It's not information that Activision ever actually released officially. They didn't release that type of stuff in their press releases. They didn't release that stuff to anybody, really. The closest we got was, like, Toys R Us, which... RIP Toys R Us.
Right.
They would get pertinent information about upcoming releases for all toy lines because they needed to be able to plan shelf space and plan signage for the sales and all this other stuff. So they would have information for like the next quarter. And dates might change a little bit over time, but we could at least see approximately when new waves are coming. And then it usually wasn't until the shipments started arriving in stores and we actually had someone on the ground. I was in touch with a few Toys R Us managers. They would text me and let me know, hey, new shipment came in today. I'm like, hey, can you crack open one of those boxes? Let me know what's in it. Sure. Like that. I mean, that's all it came down to. It's just making connections, getting to know the right people in the right places. They were Skylanders fans too. So not only did they understand what we were hunting for and why, like, I'm not asking you to sell them to me early. I just want to know what's in the box.
It's fair.
Yeah. That really makes a whole lot of sense. That's a really awesome way to do it. And as you say about Toys R Us having to keep track of all this toy information, that makes sense as to, I guess, how we would at least know that roughly like a wave was coming in the near future by, you know, having to have all those SKUs laid out and things like that, and being able to know like when the register lock date was.
And something that a lot of people just didn't want to believe was they did fall into some patterns over time. There are a lot of patterns out there. It's like, okay, wave 1 is release day. Wave 2 is going to follow shortly after that, usually 2 to 3 weeks after that. When they're releasing games in early October, by the end of October, we're going to have wave 2.
Because they wanted those toys out for Christmas.
Yeah, I mean, not only do they want them out for Christmas, but they know as soon as people come home and play the game, if we release more toys right after that, they're going to come back for more. They're going to want more. They'll found out, hey, we don't have all the elements, so we're going to get you back in stores now.
Oh, yeah, yeah. It's that whole capitalistic system there, being able to try to get you to buy more paywalls by having all those trap master gates and things like that we've talked about in a previous episode.
Oh, yeah. People were not happy about that. But that's helped out a lot too, and I was able to start kind of predicting things even before I had official information. If someone would ask me, it's like, well, I can't give you an exact date, but this is what you should look for. And like, are we going to get this before Christmas? No, we're not going to get this before Christmas, but it'll probably be there in the first week of January, just because that's what they've done for the past 4 years. So I'm expecting it again this year.
Of course, it's a pattern.
Yeah. Yep. And, you know, what you also said about the waves makes sense as in terms of also trying to get people to stay interested and keep checking the store, because if they're going to be going back for wave 2, like I remember back with Trap Team, I think it wasn't until like wave 3 that we got a magic Trap Master. And so, you know, people would keep wanting to go back to the stores, keep checking for more figures, to, you know, waiting to try to find that magic Trap Master whenever that would release, so they'd be able to get access to that gate.
That was kind of rare that we had to wait all the way to wave 3 to basically 100% the game, because prior to that, like, typically there would be 3 or 4 characters in every element, and you'd have at least one of each out by wave 2. But with the Trap Masters in particular, like, there were only 2 of each element, and so yeah, they didn't pack that many in a box because those were huge figures. And then top that off with, like I said, that there's just not as many to go around, so they spaced them out a little bit more, and that's just the way it happened. I have no idea if they planned it that way or if it's just that's how it panned out, but it was unfortunate.
Yeah, and speaking of unfortunate, there's quite a few decisions, or maybe not necessarily decisions, but definitely there were some controversial things that happened with some of the stuff in the waves from kind of Trap Team going forward that a lot of people had struggles with as well, that you know, they would keep asking you for updates on it, but they were just kind of abnormal. Like, you know, we had Thrillipede and Buzz Wing and the Yawn Traps, and also like the last 5 creation crystals never got released, or Heartbreaker Buckshot. So
yeah, but like those I understood, at least when they were shutting down the series. It's like, okay, we're not gonna throw any more money at this. But in the middle of it, like you said, with Trap Team, when we didn't get the full release here in North America, I'm like, come on, man, North America is your bread and butter.
Yep.
Like, why are you not releasing everything here? And you are releasing it down in Australia. I don't get that.
And then we recently learned something interesting about the wave system itself and the Skylanders that were made available that way. I'm actually not sure if this had reached your attention either, but it seems like depending on where you are in North America determined the availability of the figures as well. And we came to realize this primarily when it came to Thrillipede, Stormblade, and Robo, in that on the East Coast of the U.S., it was, as you said on the character list website, it was a trickle. They would get 1 or 2 figures per store per shipment. Whereas on the West Coast, I could walk into a Toys R Us, say, I'm looking for Thrillipede or I'm looking for Robo, and the employee would crack open a case and ask me, how many do you want?
Yeah, like that's one thing that I remember from over the years is that it would always take a while for things to get over to the East Coast, like because I'm fairly certain the warehouse was where they were keeping all this stuff was over on the West Coast. But that's one thing that that was weird to me because like once it started getting to things like Thrillipede and Lost Imaginite Minds and just some of the more oddball like smaller releases, especially like Waves 4 and 5 that had smaller numbers anyway. We did like in a Toys R Us, like I think I saw Thrillipede like once, and same thing with like Lost Imaginite Minds. I think my store got like 4, and so but then you're saying like, oh yeah, no, they had like 2 boxes at my store. It's just kind of crazy. So it seems like it not only was just like a way that they released the figures themselves and that it went from West Coast to East Coast, but also it seems like the West Coast got a little bit more.
I think there's a couple things at play there. You are right in saying that the West Coast got stuff first because most of their shipments were sent via boat from China to California or Washington or something like that. And that's just where the ports are.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, they were able to get it to those stores first. I think the other thing that's going on is just the stores in California typically, I mean, there's more people, so they make more sales, so they order more in the first place. And so if they order, say, 6 case packs, they're going to have more figures than anybody else. But it was very, very rare that they ever shipped like just a case of a single character. It did happen occasionally, I think, during Wave 5 when they were just, we don't have any more characters. They would occasionally release just a case with 1 or 2 characters in it. But otherwise, it was always a kind of a variety pack. I mean, it was a standardized variety. Like we knew what was going to be in every case. It was usually like 2 of each character or something like that. But those are the same no matter if you're getting them on the West Coast or the East Coast. It just took longer to get to the East Coast.
And then it was a question of how many case packs the stores ordered.
Yes, because a lot of stores, especially smaller stores, they're only ordering 1 or 2 at a time. And they won't order more until they sell out of all the figures. It's not like, oh, we're out of this one because just this one character, because they can't order just that one character. They have to order the entire case packs. If there were 10 characters in the case, but there is 2 of each of 5 different characters, and they sell out of one character, they don't want to buy a whole nother case because then they're going to have 4 of those other characters and then sell out the other one again right away.
True.
And then their shelves are just full of characters nobody wants.
Yeah.
But that's how Activision sells more product, is by mixing them in like that.
Yeah.
I just find it interesting that it was those 2 adventure packs right there at the end that came in full case packs of just themselves.
The adventure packs and level packs tended to do that just because they were bigger.
Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah, so it's interesting to me that Activision decided to ship things that way because in many ways it's to their benefit and to their detriment because on one hand, it's creating this artificial rarity that's going to be encouraging people to go around to different stores and try to find different figures that one store might be out of but the other store has because of the different numbers of figures per case. So that's good for them because that's getting them money, that's getting people shopping around more, but it's also bad because then I feel like that's probably one of the major reasons why we never even got the on traps in the United States, because at the end of Trap Team there were so many different trap sculpts and stores had plenty of them. You're still able to go and find pretty much a trap of any element except for light and dark out in the stores by the end of Trap Team, and I think a lot of stores probably just held off on ordering any more traps because they didn't need any, and I think that's probably why we never saw a release of the on traps in the US, or at least part of the reason.
I think it was a big part of the reason, yeah, because they were flooded with water traps, no pun intended, but it was just how it worked out. And you're right. I mean, everybody had water and life traps from the starter packs, yet those were what they produced the most of in the case packs that they sent out. It just didn't make sense, especially when there were only 3 different light traps and 3 different dark traps, and at least one of each of those molds you couldn't buy singly because they were in the level packs. They were definitely going for some sort of scarcity model. They had to understand by that point that people are collecting these things. but I don't think they had anybody on their team who really thought through how this was going to play out.
Yeah. That's pretty apparent, actually.
Yeah, I think so, especially with the most memorable situation to me was Thrillipede and Buzz Wing. I remember you made a video about that, I think like in like May or something of like 2016, and you were like, yeah, look, Activision sent me Thrillipede and Buzz Wing, and they say that it's going to be in stores, in like, a week, and then like nothing happened. And then like, we kept getting all these reports and stuff about like, oh, well, they pushed the date back, or like, oh, there was like something wrong with like the amount of grenades on the figure, so they had to like change that, and that's why the production thing changed. Like there was all these like different like thought processes behind like why this was happening, and it was just, that was very memorable to me, because luckily I was able to find one in store. I think probably like a couple weeks after you got yours and did that unboxing video, but like
Same.
there were people searching for like months and months after that because they just weren't released.
Yeah, it's true.
My brother and I were at Toys R Us like 2 weeks after you did your unboxing, and they had like 4 of them at that Toys R Us. Had we known they were going to be as rare as they are, we probably would have picked up 2 or more, but we only grabbed the one.
I was kind of sad after they didn't release right away that I had unboxed mine. I'm like, man, if I knew they're going to be that rare, I'd keep that thing new in box. Like, you can still play with it in the game because they can read them through the box. So I would have kept that sucker in the box. Eventually, I had enough friends that were able to find them that they got me one in box yet. But that situation was awful. And I think a lot of the stories that you heard, like with the grenades thing and stuff, like, yeah, I reported on it. But I mean, especially looking back on that now, it's like people are just trying to rationalize it, I think. I doubt that was a real big issue. I mean, there are G.I. Joe figures out there with more weapons on them than anything Skylanders does. I kind of doubt that was an actual reason. I think it had more to do with, what stores were ordering. And was that around the time that the ports were actually closing down? Like they went on strike?
Oh, I don't know.
Was that part of that too? I don't remember if that was that year or not.
I don't recall. That would have been, early to mid 2016. So quite possibly, actually.
Yeah, so that could have factored into it. And then there was also, on the topic of Thrillipede, the really weird like Best Buy release that happened a year later, where like it seemed like almost every Best Buy in the US just got one Thrillipede figure. That was particularly weird.
And I will never understand why they did that. I mean, that was obviously the Best Buy warehouse, their Best Buy corporate ordered a certain number of them and then distributed them evenly to stores, because there's no way they would have ever just shipped one figure. Like Activision would not have shipped one figure to each store. So but the way Best Buy works is they go through their warehouse.
Yeah.
And so that was one of those things too that you learned over time, just how different stores handle their shipment processes. Like some stores get direct shipments and some stores always go through a warehouse. And so if you can get someone at the warehouse level, like you can get information even earlier.
True. And Imaginators was already out and in like wave 3 at that point, wasn't it?
Oh, it was later than that.
Oh wow.
It was like wave 4. It was like literally like April, I think. It was like April, so it was probably close to wave 5. So it was almost at the entire run of Skylanders, and then suddenly we start getting all these Thrillipedes popping up all over the place. It was the most perplexing thing.
I have to imagine that was probably someone at Best Buy corporate just never canceled the order. So when they finally did make their way over to North America, Activision shipped them to Best Buy and said, hey, here's your order. We fulfilled it.
That sounds pretty much like how that would have gone down.
Yeah.
Just somebody forgot to cancel an order.
Because, I mean, otherwise, I would imagine they'd appear at other stores as well, but they never really did.
That is true.
That's very true.
Yeah. Then there's also the whole strange, I guess, non-release of Heartbreaker Buckshot. We still don't quite have an idea of what happened with that. Apparently, according to the developer interviews, the figure was canceled because it was deemed too scary for kids. because it had, the like red eye color scheme, which they also originally had on the Easter Flare Wolf, but changed on Hardboil Flare Wolf, which I think was a good decision. It fit the color scheme better to change the eye color to, I think, blue. But they still ended up canceling Heartbreaker Buckshot, which is weird because that, like, the figure got removed from the website, I think, like 2 weeks before Valentine's Day. And typically by then would have gotten the release of the holiday figure. So it was a really weird, just sudden change of events in terms of what was going on with Heartbreaker Buckshot. And we still don't quite have a good idea of what exactly happened.
I spent months trying to figure out what happened, if and when it would ever release. And I never got an answer as to what happened. The only tidbit we've got is that it was too scary.
Yeah, because with the name and the color scheme, you would think that would release during Valentine's Day. So, like, everyone was expecting it around then, and then all of a sudden, nope, it's canceled.
And then, of course, with how late they canceled it and took it off their website, at least I have come to assume that they actually produced these figures, and they might be in a warehouse somewhere at this point, just collecting dust.
I'm under the impression that they probably cut off production a lot sooner than we realize. And it was just a miscommunication. No one reminded them to take it off the website. Like, they don't care that much about what is on their website. Like, if they were really tending to their website, they'd update it with release dates, and they would update it with all this other information that they could give us. But they never did that.
Nope, they left it to you to do that.
Yeah, Nintendo's Amiibo, like, they're really on the ball nowadays. They come out with their announcements through their directs. They put the images for the figures will be up on the site either same day or next day usually. They have release dates up there. Like, they give you the information. They're a little bit more transparent about it.
Yeah, they also list the Skylanders, the Sky Amiibos on their website too. Like, they're on top of it. They do like the Twitter post where they're on the like spinning platforms and like showcasing the figures and everything like that. So they're on top of things, unlike Activision that would, like, if we're lucky, like one time we'd get a press release being like, whoops, sorry, the date got changed.
Yeah, but Heartbreaker Buckshot, like, I just don't think it ever made it to final production levels. I mean, this is just my opinion. I don't have anything to back it up. Just knowing that it was a one-off figure for a holiday. Yes, they like to put stuff out for Valentine's Day. I mean, we had Love Potion Pop Fizz and stuff like that. So, like, it was a holiday that they did put figures out for in previous years, sure. But getting to the end of run right once again, they were looking at their numbers and saying, hey, where can we cut costs? And it's like, oh, this one figure we were going to release, like, that saves them hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars probably, between production and shipping costs. Why release this one variant figure? We'll release the normal one and just save what we can, cut our losses, and call it a day.
What caused it to be such a big issue, at least from my perspective as a collector, was the way that these Sensei figures factored into the content of the game itself, in that they hid level caps behind these characters and their NFC tags. And by canceling this one Heartbreaker Buckshot, that made it so that their level cap was no longer at a nice round multiple of 5 anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that also really annoyed me. Although, as Ditto and I have figured out, that apparently the chase variants also increased the level cap. Neither of us knew that.
There are 5 of those, though.
Yeah, so that means that technically, if you count Heartbreaker Buckshot, that the level cap wouldn't be 60, it'd be 65 with the chase variants. But now, since Heartbreaker Buckshot is has not been released, it's 64. Although 64 is a nicer, more round number than 59 is. So yes. I do prefer that, but that does also mean that I need to go pay like $300 for Rock Candy Pinata, which I'm not gonna be doing. As much as I love the way that figure looks, no.
Yeah, some of these chase variants were hundreds of dollars even when they were brand new.
Oh yeah. Like, you were lucky to find them in a store too, because they were rare. Like, I think throughout my whole time collecting, I saw maybe like 2, 3.
Yeah, Rock Candy was one of the few that I found naturally in stores.
Well, that's awesome because that's a really cool looking figure. It really is. They were pretty hard to find. And of course, you'd have scalpers go buy them up and then start putting them on eBay for higher prices. And then the other really, really big problem with that was the release of Chompy Mage. Because Chompy Mage, we originally thought was going to be a timed Amazon exclusive.
No. People made that assumption. I tried to tell you otherwise. I mean, once again, I didn't have official word, but it was pretty darn sure that's how it's going to pan out. Like, if you want it, buy it now. Buy it now.
Yeah, that was your sound advice, I would say, for pretty much everything with Skylanders, because it's like once it comes out, like you better import it. Like it was taking forever for regular Pinata to get over to the States, and Pinata had already been released in that combo pack, and so it's one of those things where it's like, well, you better import it now because you don't know how they're going to be releasing it. So I definitely understand that, but that was a big mistake for me on my part because I was not someone that really used Amazon or Amazon Prime. So
Same.
like the fact of like, oh well, there's this one figure that's exclusive and it has kind of strange wording that makes it sound like it could be a timed exclusive or an actual exclusive figure. I was like, that time I took a gamble, and I know a lot of other people did, and that was not great because I ended up paying $150 for that figure on eBay when I really should have just sucked it up and bought something on Amazon for once. But I'm not making that mistake again.
See, and that was a thing with me and my brother as well. I also made the same mistake because at that point we were, it's the 6th game in the series. We had both been collecting hardcore since right before the release of Superchargers. So we had both been just dropping money like crazy to get some of the older figures, some of the figures that were a little harder to find, and trying to keep up with the new releases as well. So as Imaginators was launching, we kind of agreed that if a character was going to have a variant, one of us would get the original and one of us would get the variant to cut costs. And then we'd just, we'd share the collection. And when it comes to characters like that Chompy Mage, I realize now that we should have just bit the bullet and bought a second one. Just bought a second one of that 5-pack.
Yeah, that was an interesting situation because that was like, I think, the only Amazon exclusive that ever happened too.
For a standard figure, yes. I mean, that was the weird part, that it was an exclusive for a standard figure. They've done exclusives for variants before.
Okay.
Series 2 Golden Flame Slinger was Amazon exclusive.
Oh, yeah. So, yeah, it was weird, especially with it being Chompy Mage too. And while they did release Jingle Bell Chompy Mage for the holiday, it's weird. Weird that it'd be such a popular figure.
Exactly. That goes to show you, though, what Activision's thought process was about collectors, I think.
Yeah.
Is they didn't care. They're like, hey, yeah, we're going to make this one exclusive because we have this fantastic deal with Amazon and we know they can sell, millions of dollars worth of product for us. So we're going to give them a cool deal over here. Not thinking about the consumer, not thinking about the collector, and saying, hey, for anyone who just wants to play the game and unlock the stuff in the game, we're releasing this variant to everybody. And you can pick that up and do the exact same thing you can with the regular Chompy Mage. It's just going to look different.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
See, and we've come to notice a pattern with that when it comes to Activision and their releases of Skylanders as well, is they really have a history of not thinking about the consumer, at all, ever. The only thinking they do about the consumer is, how can I get more money out of your wallet?
Yeah, that's definitely a problem with Skylanders generally, because I'm sure their mentality along with making that decision was like, oh well, the collectors are just going to buy it anyway. It's this idea of they're going to go out of their way to either buy all the stuff they want day one in store and also buy a couple duplicates to be able to get this Chompy Mage figure, or they're going to just sit around and wait for a couple days for their shipment to come in and they're going to pick up this 5-pack. That was kind of their mentality. They were thinking these collectors are going to be trying to get it anyway no matter what, so why not just keep some figures exclusive here or there on a triple pack. That was probably their mentality, was this idea of collectors are going to be wanting to collect everything no matter what, why should we care how we're going to release it? They're just going to go ahead and pick it up.
That's true. And then many, and I mean many of us did not.
Yeah.
Because, as we pointed out earlier on this episode, this was an immensely expensive hobby.
And it got more and more expensive as the games went on.
Exactly.
Early games, I think the most expensive figures were like $10.
Yes.
And then they crept up from there by the end. You know, I mean, they were 15, I think was the most expensive. Like the Trap Masters were 15.
The senseis out here were $16.99.
Oh.
That's true. Depending which store you got them from. Some of them marked them up a little bit.
Yeah, Toys R Us always.
Yeah, Toys R Us had the collector tax.
Out here, Toys R Us was $17.99.
Yeah, they always added an extra $1 or $2 to everything.
Yeah, I think that was the same for the vehicles at Toys R Us as well. They were like 16 or 17. But the thing is Toys R Us always got those good deals. They typically almost always got their waves in first, so they knew they could charge for it.
Yeah, they would get early release, and they would order more cases than anybody else. That's how they got the early release, I'm pretty sure. That was part of their deal.
Yeah.
And then the 3 legendary creation crystals, I'm pretty sure, were also Toys R Us exclusive.
Yep.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean all the legendary line, at least in the
Everything
US,
legendary
was Toys R Us exclusive. Yeah. Which, yeah, and then they also, on the topic of the legendary creation crystals, they also released those in like a random order, but you know, like those were numbered, and then they released them like, I think it was like 2, 1, 3 or something like that.
Yeah, because they had the comic books with them.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So that was a little
and
weird.
By the time I found those at Toys R Us, they were all 3 on the shelf, and I just nabbed them.
Oh, well, there you go. That's good. Yeah, and then they also did the weird change to the paint job in Imaginators, where it was the red and gold instead of like the black / navy blue and gold. That was weird. I know why they did it, because a lot of the senseis were in, you know, like black robes with the golden belt, and so they were like, well, that's really similar to our legendary figures, so that's probably why they chose to change the color scheme. But oh no, they probably could have come up with a slightly different design for the outfits of the senseis to be able to still keep the legendary design, but still have a sensei design, I guess. It was an odd decision to change something that had been so static in the franchise for so long.
Had been there since the first year.
Yeah, it was weird.
So thinking on those legendary creation crystals that I happened to get lucky and find all of at once, I found the way that they named these, or the way that they were named in general, to actually be kind of strange. And I noticed this with the traps as well, where I would be on the Skylanders character list website and it would state one name for the traps, and then the in-game name for the traps was something completely different. And then with Imaginators and the creation crystals, they didn't even bother to supply an in-game mold-specific name. They just called it Dark Creation Crystal.
Yeah, I think that's also how they shipped them too. Like, I think like all the water traps like shared the same SKU, if I remember correctly. You know, it was just like water trap, and that would be the SKU.
That was a major problem to track those down then, because that was something that until I had my Toys R Us manager, who was a Skylanders fan as well, who understood what information I needed, like everybody else is just like, yeah, there's dark traps or dark creation crystals.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, can you describe it for me? Does it look like this or this or this?
Yeah.
Like, you have to kind of really walk them through the process and say, hey, this is why I'm asking you.
Yeah, and as a collector, waiting on that information was also very stressful, because, you know, it's like I remember for Imaginators, we knew that there was going to be like a dark creation crystal in like wave 4, I think. It might have been wave 3. It's been a while, I don't remember. But like, you know,
it was definitely very late into the game.
Yeah, it was late. I think it was after Christmas, so I'd say it's probably wave 4. But like, we knew that there was going to be one, but it took like a week or two before we even were able to find out, oh, it's just the one that came in the Dark Edition starter pack. Okay. Or, you know, like, okay, it's the one that we got in this like triple pack before that we could have already gotten elsewhere. And it's one of those things where it's like you always had to like keep up with it, and it was so hard as a collector to make sure you got at least one of every sculpt, because they would release like either in like an 8-pack exclusively, or like a triple pack or a single pack, and sometimes it was really hard to get your hands on them.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, to this day, I still don't have as many creation crystals as I would like.
Oh yeah, I know. If only I had as many as Portal Power TV, who has like hundreds of them. Like, that'd be so nice.
I find myself these days wanting to do exactly what I was upset at Activision for wanting us to do in the first place. And that's, I kind of want to get 10 of each element.
Yeah, hashtag reset the battle class.
That was my plan initially as well. And I was well on my way there until I realized like how short supplied the light and dark traps were going to be. I'm like, yeah, I'm not spending that kind of money.
Yeah, yeah, and that was a major issue for Light and Dark in general, because they always had less figures released, and like, you know, the Light and Dark expansion packs weren't released as well as they could have been in good numbers. Same thing with the creation crystals and with the traps, because, you know, everyone wanted to have like the Light and Dark traps, but they locked 2 of those sculpts behind the expansion packs, and then the other ones were really hard to find, just generally.
Yes.
And even now, like, you see, you know, Nightlight and Nightmare and, you know, a lot of the Light and Dark characters going for like $30-$40 on eBay used.
that still blows my mind how well Skylanders will sell today. Obviously the rare ones are better, but just Skylanders in general, you can sell and make a decent profit off of, assuming you're not, you know, buying them for the same prices. But if you wanted to sell off your Skylanders collection right now, you could get a decent chunk of change back.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Easily.
I know, it's crazy. But hey, I mean, you know, it's cool. That means that we have a small yet vocal fandom that still cares. So, you know, hopefully one day Activision will see that and maybe release a more consumer-friendly way of interacting with the Skylanders franchise. But, you know, it's Activision. They like their money.
How did you go about coming up with the different names for the crystals and for the traps?
Yeah.
So the traps were actually official names. Both the sculpt name and the in-game name. I mean, the in-game name, obviously, they came up with. I was actually unaware of the in-game names for the longest time. Like, I didn't pay attention to, because I think you actually had to like go into the menu
Into
to
the
find
collections.
those names.
Yeah, it was like a menu and a menu to be able to see the names.
Like, it wasn't actually like, oh, you put it in the portal and in the trap slot and there it showed that name. It wasn't anything like that. It would just tell you life trap. Okay, cool. That's all I need to know. And so I was unaware of those names for the longest time. And they were on Skylanders character list until many months later. But I eventually got those names up there. The other names were official names though, because they would be on some shipment reports. I don't remember exactly where I got them. Because I don't think, like, they didn't send those individually either. Those came in case packs again. So I don't remember exactly when I started finding those, but I know that those were not names I came up with.
Okay.
Interesting. Yeah, I always thought that was something that you had done because you needed something to put for the name of the crystal.
There were 1 or 2 names that I didn't have for the longest time, and I came up with some random name for them just because I needed something to call them. You're right. But eventually I did find the official names for all of them.
Wow.
So in this case, in the case of the traps, what we're hearing now is that essentially the sculpt and the NFC tag both had different names.
Huh. Yeah.
Basically, yeah.
That's interesting.
That is really interesting. That's fascinating, actually.
Yeah, you learn something new every day. For years, I thought you like spitballed that. But there we go. All right, it was on shipping like listings. Wow.
Yeah, so it was somewhere in there listed. For sure.
Wow.
Now, is it the same with the names of the creation crystals?
Not at all. That was crowdsourced.
I remember the voting.
Yep. As soon as I saw what they were doing, and I could see that, okay, there are slight differences. There's a difference to the sculpt on the outside. There's a difference to the actual crystal on the inside. And there's different combinations of the two. And I'm like, this is going to be a mess. So I proactively went out and said, okay, as soon as we have pictures of all these things, we're going to do something about this. Whether or not these names stick, I don't care. Whether or not they give us official names later, we can change them if need be. But I need some way to differentiate these. I need some way to go about keeping track of all these. Because as a collector, and those are the people that I'm helping as well, I just need a way to reference them.
Yes.
And so I came up with at least one basic name for each of them. And then I went out, and there are actually 2 rounds of voting. I went out and said, hey, here's the pictures, submit your names for them. And then I kind of took the top names people had given me, and if I needed to add in my own, most of them came up with similar names to what I had. So I just included that in the voting somehow. And then we had our final round of voting and say, hey, vote on each of these. That's going to be the official name on the site. Let's do this. And when that happened, the first time I saw those names being used like on eBay, that was one of the moments that I knew I had the #1 authority site in Skylanders. And another one of those times was when some of the images for particular pieces, especially like the magic items that come in the packs, like I never had a clear shot of like just the level piece. And so my wife would actually take pictures of them, and we'd clean them up on the computer, and then I would actually watermark them with the SCL logo. And then eventually I see my watermarked images being used in eBay listings, being used on Amazon listings.
That's beautiful.
And I'm like, yep, people know where to go.
Oh, yeah.
Got it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm still seeing that all the time.
But yeah, we did that with all of the creation crystals as well, because there weren't good shots of them, or even the final production piece came back with a different shade than like the CG graphic that they put out.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And some of them actually had slight, changes to their design as well. And I'm like, okay, no, we need to fix that. Yeah, I remember like the dark traps in particular. Like, I think in the images they put out, they just look like black. And I'm like, no, they're actually kind of like a very dark blue with sparkles in it. I'm like, we need better pictures. People are going to be confused, especially when you have like the dark traps next to the undead traps, which are basically black too. Like, everything just got so messed up. It's like, it's one thing if you're heavily involved in Skylanders and following their every move, but more and more, my site wasn't just for collectors. It wasn't just for kids. It was for the parents of the kids. It was for the grandparents of the kids that were using my site to figure out what my kids are talking about and what they want for their birthdays or what they want for Christmas. And those are the people I needed to help the most. And so I need to make it as crystal clear as possible. And so I needed to have proper images up there, because I knew people were going to the store and flipping through the site and saying, okay, I need this one, but it looks different. Is that actually the same? It says it's the same thing, but the picture looks different. And so that's when I knew I needed to get those pictures out there. But going back to the creation crystal names, like that was one of those moments that I just knew that I had made it. When everybody is using the names that most of the people probably don't even realize we made up. They probably think they're official names somewhere, but it's like, no, we made them up. I can go pull up the poll results again if you want. This is where the names came from.
Yeah, I remember the final round of voting because I was like on the site at the time, but I don't remember the first round. So I remember when there were like 3 names listed for each picture, and it's like, all right, which one do you want? I remember that. I remember voting in that. But yeah, so I guess how did you said that a lot of people for the first round suggested names. So how did you pick which of those names were the ones that were deemed like the most popular? Was there like an upvoting system that was going on, or were a lot of people just listing off the same name as a way to like vote for it again?
Yeah, so I just pulled it up again, but it was just a blog post that I made, and we had, by the time I put this up, we had the 10 different, what I called at the time, case molds of the different styles of crystals that we were going to get. And I just asked them, it's like, okay, naming guidelines. I had naming guidelines. Wow. Names should be quick and easy to remember. We're naming the outer casing, not the crystal shape inside. The name will be used for multiple elements, so don't worry about the color. And 1-word names are preferred, but if you have the right name, 2 words could work. So think to yourself, I'm looking for the life blank crystal. And then for submissions, just leave your list of 10 names in the comments below. Towards the end of the week, I'll go through and find the top 3 most popular or my favorite submissions for each crystal, and we'll put it to a vote. So stay tuned for that coming up in a few days. So yeah, if you scroll to the bottom of this, we just have dozens of entries here of lists of names, and I went through and tallied up what kept showing up in those lists and said, yep, we're going to vote on these, and there you go.
Just like the amount of time that must have taken for you to like go through and pick out like all the comments that people said, which ones were similar, which people were voting for the same name. Just wow. Wow.
Right.
Really, I think all the names that got picked ended up being pretty perfect. I think the only one looking back on it that I'm really disappointed about, and the reason for it is because, as you said, like sometimes you would get a picture of a render and it'd be different from the way the final mold would be, is the pyramid.
Okay.
Because in the original renders, it looked like a pyramid was on the top. But now, like, you know, they kind of have like the top of the pyramid cut off and like the pyramid's a little bit like smaller than the way it looked in the original render. And
yeah, going back and looking, the vote was super close on that one.
Oh, was it?
So Pyramid ended up with 149 votes. Tower ended up with 141 votes.
Ooh, all right.
Oh, wow.
And then Triangle, had 20 votes.
You know what might have worked is chevron.
Maybe, but that's one of those words that I feel not enough people actually know what a chevron is.
True. They pretty much just would have had to have watched Stargate.
I hear Chevron, I think gas station.
Exactly.
That's so
but their
funny.
logo is a chevron, so
Yeah, that's true. So people will either think either gas station or sci-fi show. Yeah, so maybe not the best name. So I guess Tower would have been fine, but also like looking at like I literally have a magic pyramid creation crystal on my desk. Like looking at it, it's like I don't know if Tower would necessarily work. I get what people are going for with it, but yeah, then I guess maybe pyramid would have been the best even with the sculpt change. I don't know. That one's a little bit trickier. But one that definitely got picked correctly was Fanged, because that thing is pointy. Oh boy. Same thing with the claw, too. Like, it's just very sharp.
one of the ones that always surprised me was the Reactor, because that's not a name I would have come up with.
Yeah, I like it, though. I think that really works pretty well.
It works for sure.
Same thing with the Lantern. I really, really love the name Lantern.
That one worked out a lot better than I anticipated.
Yeah, like that. Like I don't know. When you look at it, like you kind of do see what people were going for with like the old fashioned kind of oil lamp kind of design, and I think that one works really well.
Yeah. Some of them are just kind of generic, and it kind of goes with the 10th one as well. That ended up with armor. Okay, like I see it when you say armor, I see it, but I don't think that's where I would have gone with it.
Like it is one of those things where I feel like there probably could be a better name for it. It's just I don't know exactly what that name would be, because I see the other listings here are plate and riveted, and I don't know that those really exactly work as well either.
Yeah.
I think Acorn, though, even though that's generic, that hits the nail on the head.
That was one of the most unique ones, I think.
Yeah, because like that's an acorn.
Like, okay, fine, I got
Yeah.
it.
Acorn is easily my favorite of these sculpts.
Okay.
I do wonder though if like it wasn't the life creation crystal that was pictured there, if people still would have gone towards Acorn.
Yeah, because there's also the fire acorn. I don't know, but when I look at the fire acorn crystal and I see the red paint, like I still think it works, because it still looks like an acorn to me. You know, it's just like a red hot acorn, I guess. You know, so I think it kind of works pretty well, and I think it probably would have fit with the air sculpt if that had been released too. Rocket, I think, kind of is a unique one. Like, I don't think I would have come up with Rocket as a name for that, but I think it works pretty well.
It does.
Yeah, like it really does look like a rocket to me. Like, well, once you hear that name, it's like, oh yeah, like could it be anything else?
I think the only thing that bothers me about that one is it doesn't have like a pointed top.
True.
Like give
That's
me
fair.
more of a pointed top and I instantly think rocket. Like put the Eggcorn top on the rocket bottom and you got a rocket.
Yeah, there you go.
That's true.
Yeah, or the pyramid. Put it on the rocket.
Yeah, even that would work. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. It's just so fascinating to reflect on this. Like what, 5 years later? 5 years later, yeah, because it'd be 2016. Wow.
So we've been discussing today primarily the collecting of Skylanders, the ins and outs of how it was released, where to find them, or where we found them. And I think on that note, it's time that we actually go and hunt for some more. So it's on to Legendary Treasure Hunt.
It's time again for a legendary treasure hunt, and this week's challenge was to try to find the lot with the most water traps, maximum of $50. So as per usual, our scoring system is 1 point per every water trap that's in the lot, and then half a point for every $5 under that lot is from the price limit. On top of that, we also still have the rule of minus half a point for every shroom boom in the lot, and also, as I am the host this week, I am able to award one special bonus point to the lot that I think goes above and beyond. So let's go ahead and start off with your lot, Matt, since you are our special guest star. So go ahead and tell us where you found it, what's in it, and how much it is.
Well, it's all very simple because it's exactly what you asked for. It's over on eBay. It costs a whopping $37.50. So it's a little bit on the expensive side until you see it has 20 water traps. Nothing else. Nothing extra. Just purely 20 water traps. They're all water tiki traps, which I believe, if memory serves correctly, that was a starter pack thing, right?
It is, yes.
Yeah. So this is someone who bought way too many starter packs and got stuck with the traps and is trying to sell them all off. But still, if you're looking for a water trap, I found it.
You found all of it.
Yeah, there you go. You have enough to be able to keep one of every villain of the water element and then one of every evolved version of the villains, and then you have a couple left over that I don't even know what you could do with at that point. Give them to your friends.
Comes over to play. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. Give them to your friends, put them on your shelf, whatever you want to do. So there you go. You might as well. And that's a pretty good deal. Even though it is, $37.50, like that's 20 different traps for that price, which is definitely pretty good.
Less than $2 a trap. That's a great deal.
It really is. It's one of the best deals we've seen on the show, frankly. Especially when it comes to exactly fitting the challenge. This one hits the nail on the head right here. So yeah, so that's going to give you 20 points initially for the 20 different water traps in the lot. And then since you are $12.50 under the limit of 50, that would give you a point, because for every $5 you get half a point, giving you an additional point, bringing you up to 21 points.
I'll take it.
Yeah, that's actually a really good score. I don't think that's the highest score we've gotten, but that's pretty up there. Ditto, let's go ahead and hear a little bit about your lot.
Okay, well, this week I found my lot on OfferUp. And I'm honestly not sure whether this is what I would call a revenge lot or they genuinely just don't know what they have. Because this lot is $7 and it's got a whole bunch of stuff brand new in box. But let's start with just the water traps here. There are 5 water traps. 3 of them are the log holder. There's 1 flooded flask and a water angel. It also comes with a 2 new in-box magic traps, 1 air trap, and 1 earth trap, all new in box. 2 of the water log holders are not new in box, technically. They still have their plastic, but they're not sealed. So that's a total of 5 water traps, 2 magic traps, an earth trap, and an air trap. On top of that, there's a brand new in-box Elite Voodoo. And the rest of this is actually going to be new in box. Dune Bug, Sure Shot Shroom Boom,
Rip.
Sky Slicer, Buzz Wing, Shield Striker, Jetstream, Stealth Stinger, a second Sky Slicer, Dive Bomber, the Trapmaster's Enigma, Tough Luck, and Shortcut, and Nightfall from Superchargers. All of that minus 2 of the water log holders is brand new in box for a total of $7.
That's really impressive. And as you said, that's like close enough to feeling like a revenge lot, but you can't quite be sure. But like $7 for all that stuff new in box, that's really impressive. That's a great deal. And yeah, so looking at this lot, you have 5 points initially for having 5 different water traps, and then you are $43 under the max price limit, which is amazing, and so that's going to be giving you 4 additional points on top of that, bringing your total up to 9. However, you do have a Shroom Boom, which is going to drop you by half a point, bringing you to 8.5 points. But considering that pretty much all of this, except for 2 of the items, is new in box, like, I'm going to have to give you the bonus point this week, bringing you up to 9.5 points, because that's insane, frankly.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, so the lot that I found this week comes from Mercari. I have been branching out from eBay now every once in a while. But, yeah, so this lot consists of 19 different traps, but only 7 of those are water traps. And of those, there's 3 water jug heads, there's 1 water log holder, there is an axe, and then 2 tikis. And then alongside that, there's a lot of traps from a variety of different other elements, like we have a magic log holder, we have a fire torch and scepter, and then we have 3 earth hammers and an earth toucan, and then we have 2 life hammers, which you can get in the starter pack, and then a life torch, and then we have a tech helmet and an undead skull. So this lot from Mercari is $40. And so that brings my initial total for having the 7 different water traps to 7 points. And then since I am $10 under the max price, I get an additional point. And I'm not getting a bonus point, and I do not have any Shroom Booms, so that brings my total up to 8 points, which means that the winner this week by a landslide is Matt. So congrats on winning this legendary treasure hunt.
Yes, congratulations.
Thanks.
Yeah, like, really, really amazing lot. I don't know why anyone would ever need that many water traps, but when it comes to this challenge...
I think that's why they're for sale.
Yeah, when it comes to the challenge, there you go, you got it. So, very awesome. But it does go to show that if you are looking for a deal whenever you're collecting, you can find it. It just takes a little bit of searching.
Absolutely.
With some traps in hand, it's time for us to go hop aboard the Dread Yacht and head off to our next adventure and see wherever Flynn is taking us. Here we are, back aboard the Dread Yacht for another tour of a destination in the Skylands. And as we're sailing under the clouds, we see the top of a mountain appearing below us, and it looks like we're here to help out Buzz and the Mabu Defense Force fortify the area around Chompy Mountain from Skylanders Trap Team. So, Ditto, Matt, what are your impressions of this level after going back and replaying through it?
It's just as good as I remember it. Everything about these games, the music is just as enjoyable as always. I still think the music from the first game is some of the best they've ever put out, but I enjoyed this stuff too. All the little details I pick up on more now than I ever did before. Like, they put so many sound effects and ambient noises into the background while you're just running around these levels. I think that's why it's so easy to get immersed in these levels. Yeah,
I couldn't agree more, honestly. Like, I think of the Trap Team soundtrack, I really think Chompy Mountain is probably one of the most memorable tracks. It's really nice. I don't know if it necessarily fits with the level amazingly well, but I still really like the beat to it. I really like the melody. I think that it just really gets you excited for some action and for some fighting, which there is a decent amount of in this level.
Surprisingly, yeah.
Yeah, like for something that kind of feels like you're just mostly meandering up towards and then up a mountain, there's actually quite a lot.
But I mean, that's one of those things. If you just follow the main path, like if you're doing a speed run, yes, the level could be over in 5 minutes. But if you're exploring everywhere, you're going to find more fights. If you're finding all the areas, if you're finding all the villains, which was a huge part of this game, like, then these levels take a while. Then you're going to feel more fulfilled by the time you get to the end. It's like this level just went from a 5-minute level to like a 40-minute level.
Yeah, that is true. And there's definitely a lot of different hidden areas in this level, including Broccoli Guy. Like, you could definitely pass Broccoli Guy by pretty easily and not trap him at all or see him.
Absolutely.
So that's definitely a really cool area. The Troll radio station is also in Chompy Mountain as well, and that's kind of hidden off in its own little quarter of the map as well, and that's something that on a initial playthrough you might actually miss because it is hidden so well, and that's a nice thing about Skylanders games in general.
Isn't that Chill Bill's upgrade too?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, so you could completely miss that. And granted, I mean, if you're playing through the game the first time, you won't be able to get Chill Bill until the immediate next level anyway. But still, like, that's the kind of thing that you could miss on the first playthrough. And I do think Chompy Mountain has some pretty cool extras and Easter eggs off the main path that are actually pretty cool in this level.
Chompy Mountain is so chock full of content, it's not even funny. I did actually, for once, slow down playing this level again, because I have a tendency to take every Skylander level the same way, as fast as possible. And that just, well, I do have a lot to say about the stage as fast as possible. At the same time, it is chock full of extra content that if you're just trying to get through, you're going to miss every time. Broccoli Guy is one of those things that, honestly, I forgot Broccoli Guy was even here.
Yeah.
They actually have 2 trappable life villains in the same level, which is interesting because in the Golden Desert, they changed Graveclobber's element so that they wouldn't have 2 undeads in the same stage.
Yep. Yeah, changed them to Earth. And I do believe that this is the only instance of the case where they double up on elements of villains in a level. I could be wrong, but I think that this level is the only case of that, because then we have like Brawlrus, who is tech of all things, but that's because they already had Brawl and Chain, who is water, trying to get people to go out and buy those all those traps out on the shelves.
Yeah, they should have just doubled up on the water and say, hey, we know you have extra water traps, you're good to go.
So I'm kind of actually surprised that they left Broccoli Guy a life element instead of making him, I don't know, magic?
Yeah, they needed more magic villains.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Yeah, so it's kind of weird that they didn't try to balance that out a little bit more, because there was only 3 magic villains. Meanwhile, there were 6 life villains, so they could have definitely done that. And, that would have gotten their agenda of trying to get you to buy more traps out of the way. And also, I think in that case, it, probably would have benefited the magic traps, because then they would have had more use.
Exactly. And I would also like to point out that this stage changed scenery 3 or 4 times easily, but it all still felt so cohesive.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the reason for that might be the kind of like cobblestone pathway that a lot of this level has, because you get that in the village out in the beginning, you get that as you're kind of wandering up to the mountain itself. Then once you're in the interior, it's also kind of brick and cobblestone based, and then in that lead up to the arena and the arena itself, you have that whole winding pathway to the peak of the mountain. And so I think a lot of the reason for the cohesiveness is a lot of the path that you're on tends to feel very similar.
It does.
And even though you are ranging from being in a village and trying to track down the Mabu Defense Force to battling enemies to scaling up a mountain, it always still has a very good sense of art direction. And I think that really comes through very well in this level.
It really does. Also, this level provides us with the first boss fight in the game, because they did Gulper dirty and you didn't actually fight him. And that actually kind of sets the stage for all the rest of the boss fights.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and this also marks the return of Chompy Mage from Skylanders Giants. And, it's great to see him back, and he's a really fun character. Ironically, both his character and Broccoli Guy are voiced by the same voice actor, Alex Ness, who also wrote the plot to Trap Team, by the way. So it's just kind of funny that both those characters are also in this level. But he's a classic character. Tons of people love him. He's very memorable. He has a very fun personality, and his moveset's pretty cool. Like, this is actually a really fun boss fight. There's a lot of dodging you have to do, and there's a lot of like fourth wall breaks in it of like, oh, I see what the problem is now. I'm not using all my powers to defeat you. It's that's the Skylanders humor that I'm there for, and this is like a Skylanders boss fight kind of at its finest. This is like a paragon of what a Skylanders boss fight is like. And I really enjoy it. It's a lot of fun.
I actually kind of forgot that he was a repeat villain from Giants, because honestly, I have pushed the Willikin Village so far out of my mind, I prefer to forget it ever existed.
Yeah, don't remind me. That's that's a creepy place.
Yeah, we like Chompy Mage. We don't like Willikin Village.
Yep. I'm with you
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, so, but it is nice to see him back, and also he's in a setting that's actually way more fitting than Willikin Village anyway.
That's true.
Because while the Willikins do come back in Trap Team as well, like, it fits better, because we actually have Chaos leading us through that level. And so actually having Chompy Mage in a level that is themed around a little bit more of life and nature on the external part of the mountain, and, you know, having him in a place that seems fitting of a place that Chompy's would be, I just think it
full of
feels more
Chompies,
cohesive. Yeah, it's more cohesive, and it's a lot of fun because of that. He's a great villain to be able to fight and trap right at the beginning of the game. It's really a lot of fun.
I will say my biggest gripe with Chompy Mountain is the Mabu Defense Force themselves.
Yeah.
They're absolutely useless. They move too slowly. Honestly, they need to build those bridges faster. Once they build one, they need to be heading off towards the next one already while I'm dealing with the enemies.
Yeah, I understand that, and I know that because you speed run, you definitely want to have those bridges built quickly, and yet you kind of have to wait for those cutscenes where it's like, all right, they're building the bridge again.
It's too often I find myself standing there at the edge while they build the bridge so I can run across it.
Yeah, and that's the thing, because even as someone that, like, doesn't care about speedrunning the Skylanders games, I still think that those cutscenes take too long. It just feels like it's such a lull, just in between, like, waiting to be able to start playing the game again. It's just weird.
I did like how you need to unlock the entrance to the mountain itself, though, by screwing down the chompy poles.
Yes. I also kind of like the sort of, but not really, fight against Chompy Mage at the beginning when you're, like, going on the path to the mountain and you have to fire the cannons at him. That was kind of cool. That was, like, a nice little extra thing that they didn't really need to add in, but it was cool to have.
It's pretty satisfying to shoot him with his own cannons, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and then I think this also introduced the lock puzzles for the game as well. I think this is the first level where we actually get lock puzzles.
Which are much improved from previous games.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think the Trap Team version of the lock puzzle is probably my favorite. I really never liked what Vicarious Visions did with them, but I really definitely like the Trap Team version. They're fun, they're quick, but they're still puzzles, and definitely in the later levels and in the DLC stages, you can definitely get stuck on them sometimes. So I think they found a really good balance with those here, and this was a really good introduction of them, especially because they only have, like, one of them in the level, so it gives you a taste of it, but it's not, like, prominent where, like, every single gate is a lock puzzle. Instead, you've actually got a lot of battle gates.
It's true.
There were a lot of small arena fights throughout this, and I really enjoyed all of them. They're all pretty cool, and it just helped give this level a little bit more variety to it.
I do feel like Trap Team as a whole goes a little heavier on the battle gates, and this was really just kind of like the start of that. And I'm not sure how I feel about that, but it definitely is a thing, that Trap Team is one of the heaviest on the battle gates.
That's true. That's true.
I appreciate that, though, because you get more experience that way.
That's very true, too.
On one hand, you are getting all the XP, but then also on the other hand, if you're trying to speed run the game and you have to sit through all these battle gates,
that would be a problem. But I don't do a lot of speed running, only when there was, time limits on to, like, get a star or something.
The level stars, yep. That's the only speed running most people would do with these games.
You also have to remember that their target demographic is, like, 8-year-olds. So
tell that to Vicarious Visions when they're developing Nightmare Mode for Swap Force.
Right.
Well, that's when they said, hey, that's not the main game. That's an alternate level that you can play, that your parents can play. They don't expect 8-year-olds to make it through that.
I don't know how they expected 8-year-olds to make it through Spyro's Adventure.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Oh yeah, the final Chaos boss fight in Spyro's Adventure. Oh my gosh.
They expect you to have 100 Skylanders.
Oh, they do. They do.
That's fair. That's fair.
Well, yeah, maybe they don't expect, but they definitely are strongly encouraging you to go out and buy more if you hadn't already. Yeah, that is literally how I had to go out and get more Skylanders, I think, in Giants. Is the thing that encouraged me was I was perfectly fine playing through the game with the starter pack characters, but then once I hit the final boss fight, I was like, oh. I was like, this is a little bit tougher. It's harder to get through with 3 Skylanders, so I went out and bought some more.
That's what I've always told people. It's possible to get from the beginning of the game to the final boss fight with just the starter pack characters. They have to build it that way. But is it going to be easy? No.
But yeah, so overall though, like honestly, this is a pretty good level. It's early on in the game, but I really think it's a lot of fun. It's still like on the easier side, but it's a really solid level. It's great.
It was a good way to lead into everything that was to come with the Doom Raiders.
Oh yeah.
I still maintain they did the Gulper dirty, but this was a good start.
While it's been fun exploring Chompy Mountain for a bit, it looks like there's a Chompy pod up ahead. We better go ahead and get out of here before that thing starts spewing Chompies all over the place. Let's go. Flynn?
The Dread Yacht has landed here in the Archean Arena, where we pit Skylander against Skylander in a bout of theoretical combat. Today's match is going to take place between Inklander and Matt. Let's intro the champions. Inklander, who have you brought to champion for you today?
Alright, so the character that I've brought with me today is from Skylanders Swap Force, and I've decided to bring Rattleshake into the arena. Rattleshake is an undead character that is ranged, and his primary attack is Snake's Venom, which will shoot venom from his snake gun. His secondary attack is Tail Sweep, which will basically use his tail to swipe enemies away from him. And his tertiary attack is Deputy Snake, which will shoot out snake buddies to help him.
Rattleshake has a maximum health at level 20 of 840, critical hit of 64, armor of 33, speed 38, and luck 24. Snake's Venom does 33 damage per hit, 74 if charged. Tail Sweep pushes enemies away with 39 points of damage. And Deputy Snake strikes for 30 points of damage initially, and then repeated 20 damage per hit.
Rattleshake's top paths are Deputy's Duty and Bone Herder. For Deputy's Duty, Attack 3 gains an explosion, more range, and increased damage, while Bone Herder has Attack 2 summon a herd of bone snakes when charged. Meanwhile, the bottom paths are Coiled Ammunition and Gravespringer. Coiled Ammunition has Attack 1 poison enemies and deal increased damage over time, while Gravespringer has Charging Attack 2, which causes you to spring forward and have tombstones appear, which increase the range of damage. So overall, he's a pretty fun character, and just really, really awesome, because not only is he ranged, but also he has that secondary attack Tail Sweep, which allows him to knock back enemies, which would be very useful in an arena setting.
All right, so that is our first champion for today. Matt, which Skylander have you chosen to champion for you today?
Well, I will say Rattleshake is one of my favorites, but I decided to go back to the original. To one of my favorites, I think he's underrated. I think no one talks about him enough, and I love his character pose and everything about him. Camo. Camo is a life Skylander with ranged attacks. His first attack is Sunburst, where he basically shoots a burst of sunlight out of his mouth. His second attack is Firecracker Vines, which produces these explosive vines on the ground. And his third attack is Melon Fountain, which actually produces the melons, which I this is the one thing I love so much about Camo. Who on earth would expect giant explosive watermelons from a little lizard? It's amazing.
That's very true, and I find that funny because you say that I picked one of your favorite characters. Camo's one of my favorite characters. So, oh boy. We're vying for each other's favorite here. So that's kind of fun.
The Life Dragon Camo has a maximum health at level 20 of 900, critical hit 54, armor 29, speed 45, and luck 26. Sunburn does 30 points of damage, Firecracker Vines deal 20 points of damage, and the Melon Fountain deals a whopping 90 points of damage per hit.
It's terrifying.
I'm telling you,
Really
it comes out of
is.
nowhere. He has the top path, which is the Vine Virtuoso, which simply upgrades his Firecracker Vines. And the bottom path is the Melon Master, which upgrades the Melon Fountain ability.
And then, as has become tradition in some of these episodes, a third portal appears. And from within it steps Robo. Robo is a ranged tech Skylander with a maximum HP of 630, critical hit 105, armor 24, speed 58, and luck 31. His attack 1 is Archer Combo, which fires arrows for 25 points of damage, 513 points of damage if charged. His attack 2 is Whirling Destructomatic, which allows him to curl into a ball and roll out for 226 points of damage. And his attack 3 is Deconstruction Laser, which fires a laser at his enemies, dealing 82 points of damage. For his upgrade paths, his top path is Archery Mastery, which allows attack 1 to gain charge, damage, and combos. So that massive 513 points of damage on the charge is only available on the Archery Mastery path. And his bottom path is Tech Mastery, which allows for attack 3 to gain charge, and attack 2 gains a greater AoE and increased damage. And attack 3 charges further.
Okay, so I imagine you're probably going to be going with the top path on that one.
Yes, I would easily go with the top path, just as I would assume that Matt is going to go the melon path with camo.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's absolutely crazy. The fact that that is 513 points of damage. Granted, that is a slow charge, kind of like...
I was going to say, how often do you get that shot off?
Yeah, especially if you're going to be in a PvP.
Like, I can blow up a dozen melons in your face before you get the one shot off.
Probably, yes.
And that's assuming my melons don't interrupt your charge.
That is also true.
Which I don't remember if it does or not.
Camo would be able to deal 90 points of damage way more consistently than Robo, but granted, Robo still has that secondary attack, that rolling attack that's still going to be dealing 226, and that's without any charge at all. So that's definitely kind of terrifying, and while, you know, now here I am looking at at Rattleshake, who has the really great knockback, at the same time, I don't really know how much that's going to be saving me at this point from pretty much either of your attacks, really.
Especially since, for the most part, neither of us are melee. I mean, you might be able to, if I were to come at you with my attack 2, the Destructomatic, and hit you with it, you could turn around and knock me away afterwards.
Yeah.
Or if you can time it right, you might be able to knock me away right before I hit you. That's really the only thing that push is going to defend you from at this point.
Yeah, the only thing that Robo really has that's a negative in terms of a PvP fight is that low health. Because Robo has the lowest health out of all three of us here with only 630. But then again, with all those really, really high damage numbers, including a high critical hit of 105, which is fairly typical of Sensei characters anyway. I'm still definitely concerned about Robo, but honestly, while Camo's attack, especially the primary attack, isn't really amazing, Camo still has a really good speed stat, and also has the Firecracker Vines and also the Melon attack, which the Firecracker Vines has really good range, and like, Matt could basically just stand on one side of the arena and keep shooting that off if he wanted to, or he could get in a little bit closer and start doing the tertiary attack that's going to be dealing 90 damage. Meanwhile, here as Rattleshake, all I've got is, I mean, I have a decent amount of health, but like my highest attack stat is 74, and that's if I charge my primary attack. That's not looking too great for Rattleshake, gotta be honest.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think how I would play Robo for this one is I would try to use my attack 2, my rolling attack, to get far enough away that I could charge up my primary attack for that 500 points of damage. That way, if either of you get close enough that your attacks connect, I do get that one shot, and then I would revert to trying to roll out over you from there for the quicker 200 points of damage.
Yeah, that would make a lot of sense. But the thing is like, I don't know, like, the whole like pulling away from us to try to be able to get off that shot. Like, I feel like if I was in a PvP situation, I would not want you getting far enough away from us in order to prevent you from being able to charge that.
In which case, I would just turn around and roll over you.
It's true.
I only have to do it twice to make up that 500 points.
Yeah, I know. Like, the thing is Rattleshake, I think
But there's two of us.
That's true.
That's true. We could team up, that is always possible. We could team up and go after Robo here, and especially with 630 health, if I'm holding back a little bit and I'm trying to charge up my primary and you're using your tertiary attack, we could actually whittle down Robo's health fairly quickly.
Mm-hmm.
So that is actually
Absolutely.
a possibility if we did team up. So we could potentially maybe get Robo out.
Because I can tell you, I'd have the same reaction if he tries to back off. If Robo's out there, like, we're going after Robo. Like, you got to stay in the battle.
My hope there would be that we spawn just far enough apart then that I could get that charge off right before you get to me.
That's always a possibility, but then again, that's the thing. Like, Camo once again is going to have those firecracker vines. It's going to be able to at least start dealing a little bit of damage there, and that
true.
could prevent that charge from happening. So honestly, Camo is looking like a really viable character in this matchup.
Absolutely. That 90 points on the watermelons, and I believe that's before the upgrade path boosts.
Yeah,
That is actually really threatening, even to a sensei character who is supposed to be designed to have far superior stats to anything before.
right.
Mm-hmm. That's the biggest flaw of Camo, is that he's first generation.
But he's still proving to be very viable here, other than Rattleshake. Rattleshake loses.
Even if Camo and Rattleshake were able to get Robo out, like, Rattleshake would not be having much health left, if not already be dead. And, like, basically all Camo would have to do is just use that tertiary attack just, like, one more time and Rattleshake would be gone. So I don't see Rattleshake, even if Robo is out of the picture, winning against Camo. So I think that this is really pretty close between Camo and Robo. Like, this could actually be a really great thing, and it's because Camo has that really good tertiary stat for that attack, but also Robo has such low health. So I think those kind of really come into play really importantly for this battle. So I might agree. I think this could actually end up being really close to a 50-50 matchup here.
That's what I would call it. What are your thoughts, Matt?
Camo's taking it down. I don't know what you're talking about. Camo wins. But no, you're right. I mean, there's a reason I like even Rattleshake. Like, the speed that Rattleshake has with like his little snake gun thing, it doesn't hit for much, but you can fire off a lot of shots really quickly while still being able to dodge. Like, it doesn't impede your movement so much. Robo, I never really got hooked on him because, yeah, I think a lot of his power comes from being able to charge up, but that's not my style.
That's fair.
For you talking about speed running, I'm surprised you're going to sit there and wait for an attack to charge. that doesn't feel right.
Oftentimes it doesn't come down to which one is actually the better Skylander. It comes down to playstyles. So I've kind of learned to adopt several different playstyles to be able to mix it up a little bit so that I could potentially run with any character.
Yeah, Ditto.
That's fair.
Ditto
That's
is
fair.
going to do anything possible to stay as the elite portal master.
I think it'd be one of those fights where I would underestimate Robo a bit because I'm not a fan, and it would be a lot closer than I would have imagined.
Camo and Robo would each win 50% of the matches, and half of Camo's victories would come from defeating Rattleshake immediately after Robo.
Yeah, I could see that.
So we're going to call this a draw between Robo and Camo. That brings us to the end of the Season 2 finale. I'd like to offer a special thank you to our guest, Matt Sonnenberg, for joining us today. You'll find our website and our individual channels listed in the description, including Matt's. Follow our Twitter at SL Portalcasters for regular updates about the podcast and join our Discord server for Skylanders discussions. Thank you for listening, and join us on October 16th for our 10th anniversary Skylanders special. It's going to be a blast. See you then.
Bye.
Since I'm opening and closing, you take this one.
Now I need to come up with a fun story.
Mabu Defense Force, Chompy Mage.
I know, I really just want to be like, well, it looks like Alex Ness's voice acting is at it again. We're here in Chompy Mountain, but no one's going to get that. But unless they pay attention to voice actors, which, like, no one does but me. So